Here is the exact English translation of your original Vietnamese text with no additions or omissions, as you requested. Overview of the Tây Sơn family, three brothers who became three generals. Social and national context in the mid-18th century. The 18th century was one of the most chaotic and turbulent periods in Vietnam's feudal history. Although the Lê Trung Hung dynasty remained the legitimate royal court in Thăng Long, real power was held by two feudal factions. The Trịnh lords in the north, Dang Nguai, and the Nguyen lords in the south, Dang Trong. Both sides established separate governments, imposed heavy taxes, and divided the country for a long time. While the Lê king was merely a puppet, the royal court was rotten, and the people fell into poverty, chaos, oppression, and exploitation by local mandarins, harsh taxation, rampant banditry, and continuous natural disasters. The conflict between peasants and the ruling class reached its peak. The land of Tây Sơn Thượng Dao, now part of Bình Định province, was no exception. Despite having favorable geography with rugged mountains, fertile land, and being the midpoint between north and south, the people there still lived in poverty, anxiety, and insecurity. It was this land that gave birth to the three Nguyen brothers, the men who would lead the greatest revolution at the end of Vietnam's feudal era. The family background of the three brothers, Nguyen Nhac, Nguyen Lu, Nguyen Hue. The three brothers came from a humble background, working as farmers and small-scale traders in Tây Sơn village, also known as Tây Sơn Nut, Quy Nhơn district, Bình Định province. Some sources claim that their father, Nguyen Phuc, was once a border guard in the Tây Sơn region, later turning to trade in betel, medicinal herbs, and fishing, living off the mountains and forests. Though poor, their family was disciplined, educated, and morally upright. The three brothers were taught martial arts and literacy from a young age. According to folklore and local legends in Bình Định, they studied under Trung Văn Hiến, a Confucian scholar of integrity, who had once served the Nguyen lords, but, disillusioned with the court, chose a hermit life, teaching ethics and martial arts. This teacher was the torch that ignited the revolutionary fire in the brothers' hearts, sowing in them a grand ideal: support the Lê, destroy the Trịnh, save the people and the nation. The distinct personalities of the three brothers. Although born into the same family, each brother possessed a unique temperament and destiny. This explains why they later divided control over different regions after the uprising succeeded. Nguyen Nhac, the eldest, had sharp political acumen, was skilled in diplomacy, and quick in organizing forces. He was the original leader of the Tây Sơn uprising and was the first to proclaim himself emperor. However, his vision remained localized and lacked nationwide scope, which caused him to be eventually surpassed by his younger brother. Nguyen Lu, the second brother, was gentle, kind, and unambitious. He was known for being a vegetarian, devoutly Buddhist, moral, and uninterested in power struggles. However, his overly soft nature made him unable to withstand political turmoil, leading to his failure in the south. Nguyen Hue, the youngest brother, later became Emperor Quang Trung. From an early age, he stood out for his extraordinary intelligence, exceptional martial arts skills, and natural imperial charisma. He was the only one among the three with a comprehensive strategic vision, decisiveness, bravery, and a strong aspiration to unify the country, bringing the Tây Sơn movement to its glorious peak. Three men, three distinct personalities, but when united in the Tây Sơn movement, they became the three pillars of a new empire, together creating a historical earthquake that shattered centuries of division. The uprising and its rise to power. The Tây Sơn uprising was not a random event. It was born from the people's suffering, inspired by teachings from hidden scholars, and fueled by the fury of young men like the Tây Sơn brothers. In 1771, the three brothers officially raised the flag of rebellion in Tây Sơn, under the banner, "Support the Lê, destroy the Trịnh," attracting a vast number of people, heroes, warriors, and peasants from across central and southern Vietnam. The uprising quickly spread, defeating numerous feudal forces, winning hearts, and liberating the poor from exploitation. The rise of the Tây Sơn brothers was not merely a revolt against injustice, but also a symbol of the people's yearning for national unity, the end of North-Central-South division, and the establishment of a strong, fair country. Here is the full English translation of your original Vietnamese text with no added or omitted content, exactly as requested. Nguyen Nhac, the eldest brother who founded the Tây Sơn dynasty. Biography and background. Nguyen Nhac was born around 1734 in Tây Sơn village, now in Tây Sơn district, Bình Định province. He was the eldest of three brothers, Nguyen Nhac, Nguyen Lu, and Nguyen Hue. His real name was Nguyen Nhac. Later, after initiating the uprising and founding a regime, he declared himself the king of Tây Sơn and then the Central Emperor. Before the uprising, he worked as a betel trader, traveling through many regions from central Vietnam to Gia Dinh. Thanks to this, he gained deep knowledge of local people, geography, and built underground connections with various social classes, especially discontented peasants and local heroes. According to legend, Nguyen Nhac possessed leadership charisma and diplomatic skill, earning the respect of both his brothers and the people. The Tây Sơn uprising, the first to ignite the flame. In 1771, Nguyen Nhac and his two younger brothers, Nguyen Hue and Nguyen Lu, raised the flag of rebellion in the Tây Sơn Thuận Dao region. Initially, the uprising bore the slogan, "Support the Lê, destroy the Trịnh," but its true goal was to overthrow the Nguyen lords in the south, whose regime had become corrupt and oppressive, inciting public resentment. Thanks to well-organized strategies and talent recruitment, Nguyen Nhac quickly seized key areas from Tây Sơn to Phú Yên, Bình Thuận, Gia Lai, and Kon Tum. Under his leadership, the Tây Sơn forces grew rapidly, reaching tens of thousands of soldiers. He established strict military discipline, banning looting, which gained the people's trust. Alongside Nguyen Hue's military genius and Nguyen Lu's virtuous character, he formed a solid trio that supported the movement. Proclaiming kingship, from rebellion to establishing a dynasty. By 1778, after defeating forces loyal to the Nguyen lords, Nguyen Nhac declared himself king of Tây Sơn and later Central Emperor, establishing the capital at Do Ban, the former Champa capital in Quy Nhơn, officially stepping into the role of building a new dynasty. He divided power among his two brothers. Nguyen Hue governed the north-central region. Nguyen Lu governed the south, Gia Dinh, Bien Hoa. Nguyen Nhac himself controlled the central region, a strategically important position for national control. However, this division of power into three regions became the seed for internal conflict later on. Although they were blood brothers, once titles of king and emperor came into play, suspicion and power struggles began to arise. Conflict with Nguyen Hue, the Tây Sơn Civil War. By 1786, after Nguyen Hue marched north to defeat the Trịnh lords and temporarily returned power to the Lê Emperor, his prestige soared. People hailed him as a hero, and many scholars and officials rallied to his side. This made Nguyen Nhac anxious and uneasy. Although Nguyen Hue remained loyal to his elder brother, the growing disparity in power and reputation eventually ignited conflict. In 1787, a civil war broke out between Nguyen Nhac and Nguyen Hue, known in history as the Tây Sơn Brothers' Civil War. Nguyen Hue's forces attacked Quy Nhơn and besieged Do Ban citadel. Nguyen Nhac was defeated and driven into a corner. In a tragic and emotional historical moment, Nguyen Nhac climbed atop the citadel walls, crying out, "Brother against brother, blood flows and hearts break. What's left of family ties?" Moved by this, Nguyen Hue withdrew his troops and redivided the territory, allowing his elder brother to retain a small portion in Quy Nhơn, while the majority of land and military power went to Nguyen Hue. From that point, Nguyen Nhac withdrew from the political stage. His power gradually diminished, and he lived in the shadow of his younger brother, who had become Emperor Quang Trung. Final years and tragic end. After being surpassed by Nguyen Hue, Nguyen Nhac was merely a symbolic ruler in central Vietnam. He retained the title Central Emperor, but had lost real authority. Major decisions were all made by Nguyen Hue from the capital Phu Xuân. In 1793, Nguyen Ein's army, who would later become Emperor Gia Long, attacked Quy Nhơn. Nguyen Nhac called for help from Nguyen Hue, but by then, Nguyen Hue had died in 1792, and his successor Quang Tan was too young and inexperienced. The Tây Sơn defenses were weak and quickly defeated. Nguyen Nhac, heartbroken and furious at being ignored by Nguyen Hue's descendants, received no timely assistance. He died in sorrow and frustration at Quy Nhơn that same year, ending a life of kingship unfulfilled, a founding father who never enjoyed the glory of his own creation. Legacy and historical character assessment. Nguyen Nhac was the first to raise the banner of the Tây Sơn uprising, building the forces and laying the foundation for the future empire. Without him, there would have been no Nguyen Hue, Emperor Quang Trung. However, his vision and leadership were not strong enough to manage a nation in transition. He was too locally focused, too emotionally attached to family ties, and lacked the decisive ability to unify the country. He stands as a tragic figure of a founding king who was outshined by his own brother, a military genius. Nevertheless, history still honors him as the one who lit the first torch, opening a glorious and heroic chapter for the nation during a time of division and chaos. Dưới đây là bản dịch hoàn chỉnh, chính xác và không thêm bớt bất kỳ chi tiết nào từ nội dung bạn cung cấp. Nguyen Lu, the compassionate younger brother in the storm of history. Biography and personal character. Nguyen Lu was the second brother among the three Tây Sơn siblings, Nguyen Nhac, Nguyen Lu, Nguyen Hue. His birth year is unknown, only that he died around 1776. In historical records, Nguyen Lu is often overshadowed by the brilliance of Nguyen Hue and the founding role of Nguyen Nhac. However, he remained an important figure in the early stage of the Tây Sơn movement, entrusted with guarding the south, a region full of unrest and conspiracies. According to legend, Nguyen Lu was a quiet, calm person, inclined toward morality and spirituality. He followed Buddhism, was a lifelong vegetarian, loved the people, respected the elderly, and valued righteousness. In folklore, he was also called Đức Ông, Virtuous Lord, or Thầy Tam, Master 8, names that reflected reverence and closeness. Unlike his two brothers, one decisive and ambitious, the other strategic and resolute, Nguyen Lu seemed to only wish for peace, acting as a mediator. But fate did not allow him to live the peaceful life he desired. Role in the Tây Sơn uprising. From the moment Nguyen Nhac launched the uprising in 1771, Nguyen Lu joined from the beginning, handling logistics and recruiting peasant soldiers. Thanks to his gentle nature, he was beloved by the people and easily gathered support, especially in the south, home to many ethnic Chinese and Cham communities. As the Tây Sơn movement grew and spread southward, Nguyen Lu was assigned to govern Gia, where the remnants of the Nguyen lords were attempting to restore power. This was an extremely difficult task, as Gia was not only politically complex, but also a strategic gateway for Tây Sơn forces. Granted a royal title, a quiet consolation. After Nguyen Nhac declared himself emperor in 1778, he granted Nguyen Lu the title of Eastern Pacifying Prince, Dong Dinh Vuong, governing the southeast region. Though titled a prince, Nguyen Lu did not truly desire power. He focused on strengthening the rear, stabilizing the people's livelihood, refraining from conquest, and primarily defending and maintaining order. He also maintained good relations with the local Chinese population, using courtesy and virtue to win hearts rather than relying solely on military strength. However, his military skills were not remarkable, and the southern region at the time was under extreme pressure, especially after Nguyen Anh, later Gia Long, returned from Siam to reclaim Nguyen authority. Confrontation with Nguyen Anh and tragic collapse. In 1785, Nguyen Anh attempted to attack the Tây Sơn, but was disastrously defeated by Nguyen Hue at the Battle of Rạch Gum, Xoài Mút. After the victory, Nguyen Hue returned to Phu Xuân, Hue, leaving Gia under Nguyen Lu's control. However, once Nguyen Hue withdrew, Nguyen Anh quickly returned with the support of the French and built a new power base in Dong Nai, Gia Dinh. Facing the strong resurgence of Nguyen forces, Nguyen Lu lacked the flexibility and strategic ability to respond, as well as strong defensive forces. The situation became increasingly critical. Under intense pressure from Nguyen troops, Nguyen Lu was forced to withdraw from Gia Dinh, moving his forces to Bến Tre. Afterwards, overwhelmed by sorrow, he fell seriously ill. Several historical sources record that, out of shame before his brothers and feeling guilty toward the people for losing Gia Dinh, Nguyen Lu committed suicide. A quiet death, without fanfare, but one that left much sorrow for contemporaries. Assessment of contributions and character. Nguyen Lu was not a battlefield hero, but he was a gentleman amid chaos. History may not glorify him like Nguyen Hue, nor credit him as the founder like Nguyen Nhac, but he symbolizes compassion, tolerance, and rare humanity in a time of war and bloodshed. In him, one can see the humility of a man who did not seek power, the respect for brotherhood and family bonds, the gentleness amid turmoil, and the tragedy of one unfit for the times. Nguyen Lu died in silence, but it is precisely that silence that made him more noble in the eyes of many of his contemporaries. Many temples in the south still worship him today as a virtuous saint. The three Tây Sơn brothers are like three different stars in the sky of history. Nguyen Nhac, the one who lit the fire of rebellion, sparking faith to overthrow feudalism. Nguyen Hue, the one who crushed internal and external enemies, unifying the country. Nguyen Lu, the one who kept the flame of righteousness, living peacefully amid storms. No matter who shone brighter, all three contributed to a glorious and tragic Tây Sơn era in Vietnamese history. Here is the full and faithful English translation of the original Vietnamese text you provided, with no additions or omissions. Conclusion: the three Tây Sơn brothers in the flow of national history. The historical portrait of Tây Sơn, uprising, prosperity, tragedy. The three Tây Sơn brothers, Nguyen Nhac, Nguyen Lu, and Nguyen Hue, were not just historical figures, but symbols of a transformative, turbulent, and hopeful era in Vietnam's history. They were not born in gilded palaces, nor did they inherit a glorious dynasty. They came from the fields and mountains, the sons of a poor farming family in the remote region of Tây Sơn. From that impoverished land, they rose above fate, igniting a revolutionary movement that shook the heavens and earth, shattering the centuries-old division between North, Central, and South. From three ordinary men, Vietnamese history witnessed a golden era, short-lived but brilliantly radiant, under the Tây Sơn dynasty. Nguyen Nhac, the initiator, but incomplete. Nguyen Nhac was the soul of the Tây Sơn uprising. Without him, there might never have been the 1771 rebellion or a movement that swept across central and southern Vietnam. He had organizational thinking, the ability to rally forces, and a vision sufficient to build a new center of power in the central region. However, Nguyen Nhac lacked a nationwide strategic vision. He was strongly regional-minded, politically cunning, but vulnerable when facing a military genius like Nguyen Hue. His peak was when he declared himself Central Emperor, but tragedy struck when his own younger brother surpassed him, leaving him to live in the shadows and die in bitterness, partially forgotten by history. Contributions: initiating the uprising, building forces, governing central Vietnam. Limitations: internal jealousy, division of power, failure to achieve national unification. Legacy: a pathfinder with the image of an enlightened ruler, but lacking magnanimity and depth in statecraft. Nguyen Lu, the kind-hearted one, drawn into the whirlwind. Nguyen Lu was the gentlest and most yielding of the three brothers. He had no ambition for power, nor the commanding prowess of his brothers. Yet, because of that, he was best suited for the role of mediator, securing the rear, and cultivating the people's support. Had Nguyen Lu lived in peacetime, he might have become an honest official or a virtuous monk, not a defeated general in wartime. His death, quiet in Binh Tre, was a tragic end for a man born in the wrong era. Contributions: logistics, social stability in the South, winning the people's hearts. Limitations: lack of military capability, unable to resist Nguyen An's forces. Legacy: a symbol of benevolence in chaos, a revered prince in the hearts of Southern people. Nguyen Hue, military genius and reformist emperor. Nguyen Hue, the youngest, was the brightest sacred flame among the three. Not only a military genius, he was also a great political reformer, the only one among the brothers who held the vision of national unification. He defeated both the Nguyen and Trient lords and repelled the invading Qing army, being hailed by the people as a national hero. However, Nguyen Hue also made controversial decisions, such as attacking his own brother for dominance, though he later withdrew and reconciled. After ascending the throne as Emperor Quang Trung, he implemented numerous reforms in education, military, administration, and diplomacy. Sadly, he died too young, 1792, leaving behind a legacy not yet solidified. Contributions: unifying the country, defeating foreign invaders, strong reforms. Limitations: internal civil war, excessive centralization of power. Legacy: one of Vietnam's greatest emperors, a hero who embodied both intellect and bravery. Their place in the Vietnamese psyche. In the hearts of the people, the three Tây Sơn brothers are more than generals. They are symbols of three different virtues. Nguyen Nhac, the standard bearer representing resistance and enlightenment. Nguyen Lu, the mindful one, symbolizing compassion and forgiveness. Nguyen Hue, the unifier, embodying genius and national aspiration. Though the Tây Sơn dynasty lasted less than 30 years, its legacy of resistance against feudal corruption, national defense, and inspiration for the oppressed remains deeply etched in Vietnamese memory. In Binh Dinh, Phu Yin, Gia Lai, the Central Highlands, and even Old Thang Long, temples, altars, and commemorative ceremonies for the three brothers are still regularly held. History is never perfect, but within the fractured currents of the nation, the three Tây Sơn brothers left behind a brilliant and proud chapter. It is the story of three peasants who rose from mud and mountain winds to reach the pinnacle of power. They failed, but were never mediocre. They died, but left behind an immortal legacy. The country may fall, dynasties may change, but their names live on as flames of resistance, freedom, and independence in the hearts of the people.